Alison, it's so nice to see you again. You're one of Lawbreak's favorite guests ever. People love you here on this channel, and I'm very happy to have you as my guest again today.
I'm happy to be back.
Well, welcome back. And we're back because we're going to be talking again about, guess what, cops. And it's a topic that you and I have already talked about. We talked about the Toronto Police Service not a long time ago, and that was in the context of Project South. We're not specifically talking about Project South this time. It's kind of a bit connected, though. We'll get to that point in the discussion here today. But we're going to be talking today about something that happened just this past week, which is, I find, a bit outrageous. It's the OPP report that was done following the Zameer case that I think many of us had no idea was happening behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And we were surprised that there was a report that was going on. And we were surprised by the findings of that report and by the comments that were made by the police forces and the premier, sadly, following that report. So let's talk about that. Like, let's get into more specifics for those who are not very caught up on this issue of the OPP report.
Outrageous. So, and long story short,
Yeah.
um, Mr. Zameer is found not guilty by the jury. Justice Malloy makes some comments to the effect that there was collusion or may have been collusion amongst the officers that testified, the eyewitness officers. And immediately after the not guilty verdict, the chief of the Toronto Police comes out and says, "We are disappointed in the verdict." That was problem number one and probably warning sign number one. And then they went in and got the OPP to do an independent, I can't say that with a straight face,
Yeah.
independent report on whether or not the officers colluded or committed perjury. And surprise, surprise, their brothers in blue were found to have done absolutely nothing wrong.
Okay, so now there are two problems already here that we can see right away. First of all, it's a police force that is doing this independent report. And then why do we even need that report? Is this something that happens every time? I'm not aware that we need to have an independent report after a trial that doesn't go the way the police were anticipating, right?
No, nope.
Yeah.
News to me. News to me. And quite frankly, the suggestion that it was an independent report because the chief wanted to know if there had been perjury is utter nonsense. He, showed his cards when he said immediately after the verdict that they were disappointed.
Yeah.
What they wanted was vindication, not, you know, an impartial
But
investigation.
what's the force? Like, is there any force to this report? Like, fine. Eventually, they got the results that they wanted in that report. So what now? Like, so are they going to reverse the decision? It's not an appeal. Like, that was another
No,
route that was available, though.
exactly. If the Crown had had any concern whatsoever about the propriety of the verdict, they could have appealed.
Right. And
They
they made that
didn't.
decision, right, that they were not going to appeal. And I think Nader Hassan, who is counsel for Mr. Zamir, he did mention that the Crown did not appeal. That was an option. It's always an option when there is a finding of not guilty. And
Yeah.
it was not chosen by the Crown. So the police just doing this on their own, and there's no indication that the Crowns were involved in that report, right?
None. No,
So
not as far as I'm aware.
So that's a bit problematic because it kind of also tells us that, I mean, are the police working on their own? Are they working with the Crowns for a case? What is going on here?
Uh, it's remarkable. I mean, I made a comment to a friend who shall remain nameless, but a former police officer about this. And so I asked, what on earth did the legal department think of
Yeah,
this? And he said, I said, paraphrasing, but essentially all of the Toronto Police headquarters, including the legal department, I think his word was toxic at the moment, and everybody's quitting, and it's just an absolute tire fire. So I doubt they were even consulted either. But legally, it has absolutely no effect other than that
hmm,
the officers are not going to be charged criminally with perjury. Um, it- Unfortunately, it probably has some effect on the public perception of the justice
right.
system.
And that's the most concerning part because that is based on something that was not tested in court. That is a report
Correct.
that was, I mean, Mr. Zameer was completely left out of that process as well. So
Yes.
this case is about this guy and whether he was guilty or not. And yet he was not involved whatsoever in that report. So I just don't understand what I mean,
And none of it was tested in public. It says something about they spoke to 12 different witnesses. Was any of that open to the public? Was that evidence ever tested in any public forum? No, none of this evidence was ever tested. It was all done behind closed doors. It's absurd. The whole thing is absurd.
and yet, just as a reminder that the trial was a proper trial, it was a jury trial. It was open to the public. There was no publication ban, from what I remember. It was open to the public. There was a jury, and all witnesses were tested. There were two experts. There was a Crown expert and defense ones, and they gave the same evidence. So it's a surprise a bit here that we have the OPP expert has a different opinion. That like
Exactly. It's comical. Like I feel like I took too much LSD in high school. I don't know what is going on anymore. It's insane. It's comical. And they're making such a sham of um, the strong judicial system that we have, and to repeatedly recently, in various different horrendous ways, call it into question in such a public way is it's scary, honestly.
well, yeah, and I mean, beyond the report itself, it's just the reaction afterwards, demanding an apology from a judge because the judge was doing, her job, like this is what is really concerning. I mean, this is what judges
Yeah.
do. They hear evidence in court and they make findings based and comments based on what unfolds right in front of their eyes. And so they want that. It's almost like telling someone you have to unsee what you just saw. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and not only did she preside over a public trial, but she saw all of the
yeah.
witnesses testified. She assessed their demeanor. She saw them be cross-examined. She saw the incredible changes, as I understand it, in many of their evidence between what they said at the beginning and what they said once the court process started. It was at that point that suddenly everything became, they all had the same false memories. She saw all of that. Um, with respect to this OPP report, we, the public, have seen none of that. I don't know who these witnesses were or where they gave their interviews or anything.
Well, we
Like
weren't
it's
aware
it's
of the report in the first place. Like nobody
right.
knew that this was happening. That was a surprise. And then to see that it was happening behind closed doors, or at least nobody in the public, Mr. Zameer himself had no idea. I mean, this is what I mean, is just so shocking as well.
Yes, exactly. And then the demand for an apology, including by the premier, not just the police chief,
Yeah,
but the premier,
yeah.
is horrendous. Horrendous.
And as we know, judges are not allowed to comment publicly about their cases. So they're asking her to do something. They're asking Her Honor to do something they know she can't do. She can't just go
Right.
and make that apology. And she shouldn't actually make an apology because it was again, if there is a problem, it's an appellate court that would, you
Exactly.
know, do something about this. And we have our other
Exactly.
returning guests here.
Gus,
Hi,
Gus is
Gus.
no fan of the police.
No, but I mean, the concern here then, Alison, is this going to set a precedent? Is every time there's going to be a case where things don't go the police way, they're just going to have their own independent report and see if they were right in the first place? Because I'm thinking if that's going to be the way things are going to happen moving forward, well, if I don't get a result that my client wanted, well, I'm going to just hire a bunch of lawyers, ask them to investigate on their own, and give me the result that I want for my client. Can't we do that now?
Well, apparently so. Yeah,
Yeah,
but remember though, there's different rules for the police and for the rest of us
right.
regular folk. Yeah, that's important to keep in mind. I mean, that's my concern for sure. Like, definitely when it has anything to do with, findings of police misconduct, this could well become a trend. Absolutely.
Well, and then how fair is it that they asked another police force? Fine, it's not the Toronto police, but it's still another police force, as opposed to asking, let's say, former judges or let's say lawyers to do an investigation. Because that's private investigations are sometimes done by lawyers or former judges. We remember with the Law Society, it was a former judge who did the report.
Exactly.
So why here are we asking another police force? And again, this is the same, the Toronto Police, just as a reminder, is the same police force that's currently being investigated for corruption under Project South. So it's looking very messy for the Toronto Police right now.
It's very messy. The other thing that this friend of mine, who shall remain nameless, texted me immediately was that Chief Demku needs to just learn to shut up. And he's quite right. This is a former high-ranking police officer. I mean, it's a gong show. There is something rotten to the core going on at the Toronto Police Service, quite clearly. I mean, that's evident not only from what, retired police officers have said to me directly, but from this show that they're putting on recently, either by getting arrested or by calling for judges to resign or apologize, I
But
suppose.
it is a show because, I mean, first of all, it's not going to change anything. The verdict is still going to be the same. There was no appeal, so that's not going to change. Um, there is not, Mr. Zameer is not found guilty of murder. That's it. Um, so I'm just not understanding, though, the reason or why are they putting this show together? Like, for what? What's the point? I
I
guess.
mean, as I understood it, the idea behind it was to investigate not the accident itself, but to investigate whether the officers committed perjury. That's what I understood the purpose of the report to be. And then it somehow morphed into getting an entire new accident reconstruction report done, which how that was necessary to determine whether
Yeah.
they'd committed perjury or not, in light of all the other changes in their evidence and stuff, is beyond me. But that was supposed to be the purpose of the report, at least according to what was said publicly. There was no need to get an entire accident reconstruction report done in order to look at the evidence about whether they'd committed perjury or not. It was unnecessary. They had all given police statements already. They had all testified at the preliminary hearing in the trial. It wasn't necessary. It
And
seems to me like they more just wanted to redo on the trial.
And there were two experts at the trial on that very same subject, and they gave similar evidence on that point. And my question is, who paid for that report? Do we know?
Probably the public,
The public.
I
Yet,
would assume. Yeah, exactly. It came out of the police budget, I'm sure. So you and I did.
right, for something we weren't even aware of and we didn't even ask for. And I don't think anybody at this point, I mean, have we not moved on from that case? I mean,
You would
it was in
think.
2024, but this just puts us again in a situation of trust towards the police, at least with the Toronto police. I mean, this is a second weird incident involving the Toronto police, and it's not looking good for them. And it just kind of makes us not really very trusting of them. So, is there a way that the trust can be restored, or there should be an investigation into the Toronto other than Project South at this point?
I think there should be, absolutely. I think the chief absolutely needs to go. It sounds, from both things that many of us have heard publicly and privately, that it's rotten to the core down at headquarters. So that's step one. The chief has to go. But yes, I do think that there needs to be a bit of a, I mean, I don't think you can ever get rid of, if I'm being honest, corruption in the police, but certainly there needs to be somewhat of a house cleaning and an investigation.
Because how can we work with them moving forward? I mean, that just puts into question many of the things that we're going to be doing, especially for those of us who have cases in Toronto. Many of them are, like the police force involved is the Toronto police, and there is these issues that are coming up with their
Exactly.
members. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just, I mean, here's the thing. If we want to make a bit of a distinction, Project South seemed to have been targeted towards specific individuals within the force, but this
Yes.
is more the force. This is the Toronto police. Like it's not just one or two individuals, it's
Right.
a collective.
Yes.
So it's problematic on a collective and on an individual level right now. And the problem is, though, um, I wonder how much of this is happening in other forces and we're not aware of it at this point.
I mean, certainly corruption is happening everywhere, I think. I mean, that's the honest answer. And that's not just the police. I mean, there's, bad apples in every profession, right? I don't mean to just say that all the police are corrupt, but there's definite issues and there's a definite culture, even if you don't have this thought process when you sign up to be a police officer. I'm sure many people start with good intentions and really wanting to help, and that's why they become
Yeah.
a police officer. You, it's the us versus them
Mentality.
mentality that somehow becomes ingrained in them. I don't know what it is, but it happens everywhere. How do we change that? I haven't got the foggiest idea, but I mean, having the chief reinforcing those attitudes is extremely problematic, to state the obvious.
It is. And I find also another problem that's being revealed through this. If we look at what's going on with this, adding to that Project South, Allison, just feels like the police forces on their own have pretty much a lot of power independently from the crown. I mean, my understanding of the system so far was that the police, well, they were investigating, collecting the evidence, but ultimately it's the crowns who make the decisions, who have discretion and who should be more powerful. But here it seems like the police have a lot of power. And I do remember that, uh, again, this is just from what I heard. I'm not sure if it's actually true, but during the Zameer trial, that it was really the police officers who were really pushing the crowns not to let drop the case or to go for less than murder. When, in fairness to the crowns, maybe they were kind of hesitating. They were starting to see that the evidence is not really supporting a murder charge, but the police were
Mhm.
pressuring them. But that's scary because they shouldn't be um, exerting that kind of power over the crowns, right? Am I wrong here? Is there something that I'm missing or that
You
I
are
misunderstand?
absolutely right. They think they run the Crown's office. They think they run the courts. They think they run absolutely everything. They think that they're top dog and we all just bow to them and do what they say. It seems to me. Yeah.
Well, and another way that this manifests itself is we see this when we have to wait for them to bring the prisoners to
Hmm.
court. Even if we give a specific time that X individual has to appear in court at that time, they don't necessarily respect that. They will be brought whenever is convenient or good for them. So there is already this feeling, this vibe that they run the show. But that is
Yep.
outrageous, though, because they're part of a system. They work with other justice system participants, and yet they're doing whatever they want to, and there's nobody that's stopping them, though.
Well, that's part of the frustration. Like it's the another example, and it's correctional officers, but I sort of um put them in the same basket as, at least around here, you'll have somebody in a video booth doing Zoom court, a bail hearing, a sentencing, whatever, and the officers just walk in halfway through and say, "Time's up, we're
Yeah,
done," while the judge is talking and we're
right.
making submissions and just drag them right on out of there.
I know.
And they think they run the show, the police and the correctional officers. And unfortunately, most of the time they get away with it. Occasionally you'll see a judge, call a sergeant or someone to come explain themselves, but does anything ever happen? No.
So, okay, I want to ask you this because you've been practicing for way longer than I have been. And so I just want to ask you though, is this something that used to happen before, or is this something that is becoming a trend now? I don't
It's
remember. Listen,
certainly
I've been practicing now for 10 years and I don't remember anything like what I'm seeing now. I've never seen this,
no.
let's say 5 years ago. What
It's
about before?
certainly much, much worse now. There were. always periods at Maplehurst here in the GTA specifically where they would have worked rules or whatever, and they'd be, bring people late. That would happen now and again for short periods,
Yeah.
but otherwise, no. This is a new thing. Definitely. I mean, police lying is not a new thing, but
Right.
everything else is
But we're
relatively
way
new.
beyond police lying here. Like,
Yes,
I wish that was the only issue that we were dealing with. Like, this is completely, I
exactly.
mean, this is honestly, it is connecting to Project South again.
Mhm.
It's going to police corruption uh,
Yep.
on a different level here. But it is corruption because if you're not happy with an outcome, well, do better the next time. But don't just
Right.
try to force the outcome that you wanted for that particular case.
Exactly. And just the effort being made to sow distrust in the justice system is what really bothers me. I mean, to suggest that a judge, one of the most respected judges, by the way,
Yeah,
probably in the
yeah.
entire province, should apologize because she didn't say what you want is horrifying. And what has to, what sort of poisonous mind must you have to think it's okay to say that out loud? I mean, hell, think it if you want to, fine. But to the the chutzpah it takes to say that out loud and think that that's okay, is utterly mind-boggling. It's
And
mind-boggling.
and also, I mean, just a reminder that judges, when they think that's a witness is lying, whether it's a cop or even our clients, they will say it anyways. I mean, if they don't believe a client, they will also say that this person was lying and I
Oh,
don't
yes.
believe a single word, but it's fine, right? It seems like it's okay for judges to destroy a poor little accused or, like it's fine, they don't count. But when it's a police officer, God forbid. You say
Exactly.
anything bad about a police officer.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, and it's not just a question of being a bad sports here. It's really, it's deeper than that. It's more concerning.
Yes.
And I mean, like I said, you can be upset with a judge's decision, but nobody just goes and gets a report at the expense of people, civilians, just to get the result or outcome that they want. I mean, again, if this is a precedent that's being set, that's a dangerous precedent that we're having here.
It is, and it's very Trumpian. Honestly, like you can see the attitude from Trump's time in office, ordering that judges be fired, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera, speaking publicly about how they all got this, that, and the other thing wrong. I remember quite clearly saying, we have too strong a system up here. It's not gonna, that's not gonna happen up here. Well, I mean, that's where, they're feeling powered by seeing the most powerful man on the world doing that. And, here they are now doing the same sort of thing.
And that is so scary. But how do you think we can stop this from getting worse, Allison? Because if nothing is done, it will only get worse. And that's the problem.
It is. I mean, somebody in power needs to come out and speak loudly and clearly about it. In my dreams, the Attorney General of Ontario would come out and speak about this and say how inappropriate it is. Is that going to happen? No, not this Attorney General, but that is who should be out there speaking loudly and clearly that it's completely inappropriate. Um, Attorney General of Canada as well. I mean, he's not directly linked, but people with a voice who people will listen to need to speak out. Me yelling and screaming on Twitter, that's great. It's not going to change much. People need to speak up loudly and clearly. The judges can't. It's got to be, the attorneys general and others that are speaking out about this, I think, as a start.
Right. Because I mean, like eventually this could lead us to a police state.
Exactly. Yes, that's what they want. Clearly. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if that's what the public at large wants, but it is going to be. problematic if this happens. And at least we know, I think, that from the Superior Court, well, Justice Malloy herself did not respond. Obviously, she can't. But I think that there was a message on behalf of the Superior Court that she's not going to give an apology, and which is the right thing to do here because,
Yes. Yeah, the
I mean,
Chief Justice did speak
yeah,
out, which I was very, very glad to
yeah,
see. I hope it gets more play or attention. The fact, 'cause I didn't even know, I was driving home from jail this afternoon with my articling student who saw it on somewhere on social
yeah.
media and told me, but I hadn't heard that. That needs to be given a lot more voice.
And do you think that judges should be given more opportunity to defend themselves or to say something if this continues to happen? I mean, they shouldn't, but if this continues to happen, how fair is it to allow people to make these comments that are, I mean, we know they're not, there is no basis for her
Yeah.
to issue an apology.
No, there certainly is not. Um, I mean, I don't think we should give in to making it more of an Americanized system, but um,
But
the
it's getting Americanized on the
it
police side,
is.
though. That's the
Well, it
issue.
is. I know. Certainly, the Chief Justice having a voice
Yeah.
should use it a lot in situations like this. It's sort of like a spokesperson, I suppose. I I don't think we necessarily ever want to get to the point of judges coming out and speaking about their cases. You know, then when we're going to be on to elected judges, and it's just going to be completely Americanized, which we really don't want. But the court does need to have a voice on behalf of the judges, definitely. And I would also like to see, I might add, the Crown Attorneys Association speaking out
Hmm.
about this. Where have they been? I haven't heard a peep
Me
unless I
neither.
missed it. They should be equally loud about the inappropriateness of this as the defense bar is. And speaking out about the impropriety. It should be solidarity between the defense bar and the Crowns.
It does put the crowns, though, in a very awkward position because crowns work very closely with the cops. Now, here's the thing defense, we're on the other side, we don't work
Mhm.
with them. Judges are impartial, they don't work with anyone. Crowns, on the other hand, they do work with the cops. So it really puts, I find, the crowns in a weird position where they're working with these people where they're probably, I'm sure many crowns are not happy with what the police did here, but also they can't also say negative things about the police force that they're working closely with. So,
At a certain point, I think they have to. I mean, not individual crowns necessarily. It's not like I want the crowns who prosecuted this case to come out and speak, but the professional association, for example, as a collective, without singling out any particular crown attorney, they need to speak out. Their first duty is to the justice system,
mhm.
right? They took an oath to uphold our principles in the justice system and to just stay quiet while this nonsense goes on. Particularly, I mean, do I expect them necessarily to speak out about the fact that a report was obtained? No. I mean, let the police do whatever nonsense they're going to do. But when the judges start getting criticized by those police officers, sorry, I don't care if you work with them every day or not. Your job is to uphold the perception of the justice system
And
in the public
dissociate
eye.
yourself from this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
So they
because,
need to be
yeah.
saying something too.
Well, I mean, we do see in charter cases, for example, the judges will exclude evidence and say that they have to dissociate themselves from that police action because it will bring the administration of justice into disrepute. And so maybe this is something here that the Crowns can do and just say that we're not associated with this. We have nothing to do with that decision to make the report, and we don't endorse or join them on the comments that they made regarding,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. If they haven't been having a million meetings about this, I don't know what they're doing because they absolutely need to speak out and say something about this. 100%. When it's the chief of police and the premier of Ontario, something has to be said.
So, have you been hearing about what was going to happen following this report? Because, okay, fine, they got the outcome that they wanted on paper.
Mhm.
So,
So what? Nothing
so
else
what?
is
I know
happening.
it's like you give a child the sticker that they want, but then so what at this point?
Exactly. No, I haven't heard anything. They got their vindication. Case closed now, as far as I can tell.
But I mean, like, as a member of the public, like, the public should be outraged. Again, it's probably their money that was spent on this. The trial itself,
Definitely.
fine. Let's just start with the trial itself. It was lengthy.
Hmm.
It lasted several weeks. I can't remember exactly how long it was now. It was 2 years ago.
Hmm.
That cost money because that was at the expense of Ontarians that trial took place. And now more
Yep.
money on a report that nobody asked for, nobody was aware of. So, I mean, for the Ontarians, it must be really outrageous that their money is going on this, especially at a time right now where everything is expensive. Food is expensive. People are worried about what's going on a global level. Do we need this? It's a complete waste of time and resources.
Correct. Yes. That's all I got. Correct. Yes. No, it's the whole thing is I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe
Yeah.
sometimes, the things that I'm seeing these days now. It's mind-boggling. So yeah, no, I don't think we're ever going to hear anything about it again, to be honest. It's done. And that's unfortunate because I think there needs to be more pushback than there has been about not only the report, but even more problematic, the comments about Justice Molloy.
Who other well, I guess it's probably the premier who would have been able to tell the police like if they're doing something that is inappropriate, just to put a limit and just give them a warning and say, stop doing this.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, in this case, the premier endorsed the report and was actually happy about the results. And wanted the judge to provide an apology, which I find as well is shocking because I mean, if we understand what the role of a judge is, um, but who would have that authority other than the attorney general? I mean, something has to happen to make people remember their roles, their limits, and you know,
Yeah.
the boundaries.
D Doug Downey needs to stand up and say something, and he's not going to. He's the
Mhm.
worst attorney general I can remember in a very long time. Um, I mean, I don't even have words. Like Doug Ford, in the same day, I think, maybe 2 days, maybe one after the other. First, he's endorsing this nonsense about Justice Malloy resigning. Then the next day, there was a fellow that shot someone in his house in self-defense. And it was a guy that broke in, I gather, and he wasn't charged. Great. And then Doug Ford says, because the fellow managed to escape and run away after he was shot, Doug Ford says, well, he should have just kept on shooting, pump a few more bullets into him. I mean, which of course is not the law of
Yeah.
self-defense. That could have found him with a murder charge, whereas now he's not charged with anything properly. So it sounds like. I just, somebody needs to rein them in. I don't know what the answer is, but it's just incident after incident after incident, and someone at the top has got to speak out publicly and call them out. And we've heard crickets from Downey and everybody else.
Well, what is happening to the rule of law right now? What is the status of it? Like, does it have any kind of impact? It seems to work when people in authority or power are happy with the outcome, and when they're not, then they just completely disregard it. Like, wasn't the law supposed to be the law, and it applies whether you like the outcome or not? It's we have a system and we apply it the same way and equally, and
Mhm.
the outcome should not, like change depending on what people in authority want.
Can you imagine if I was sitting in a trial court and the judge, gave their reasons for finding my client guilty, and I stood up and said, "I demand an apology, Your Honor."
Right.
My butt would be in jail probably about 5 minutes later.
I
Like it's mind-boggling that they think that is in any way appropriate. And again, different standards, because as I said, if I would, there would for sure be a law society complaint. There go would my career. I might get cited for
Right.
contempt and thrown in the clink. I mean, like it's mind-boggling. Someone needs to rein them in. Maybe they'll all end up in jail after Project South, and we'll get a fresh start.
Well, I mean, that's a thing. Well, here's my concern though. I mean, what's going on with Project South at the moment? Because my fear here is that it will all of a sudden disappear. We won't hear anything more about it, and
Hmm.
everything will just go back to normal or to way things were. And it's as if this project never existed. That's the
Hmm.
other concern because it seems like they're pretty powerful. And if they want something to happen their way, they're going to find a way to make it happen that way.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. Um, Given what we've seen recently, I've heard rumblings of more Project South charges that are even worse than what we've heard. I hope that's true, if I'm being honest at this point. But um, I, I don't know if anything will ever come of that. But I'm sure they will do everything in their power to try and sweep it under the rug and make it go away. Unfortunately for them, there's also civilians charged in Project South, so maybe that will prevent it all from being swept under the rug because all the civilians should go to jail, just not the police, you see.
Are we really on the road of becoming the 51st state, Alison?
It feels like it.
Right. I mean,
Yes.
it's pretty scary to be honest, because it just feels like we're on the road to becoming the 51st state.
Everything traces back to him. It's when the most powerful man in the world feels comfortable calling out judges by name and calling into question their decisions and all of those sorts of things. It shouldn't be a surprise that, other powerful figures on a much, lesser scale, obviously, are going to feel empowered. And here we are. I honestly am not sure that in fact, I am relatively sure this would not have happened in terms of, at the very least, the public statements about calling for the judge to apologize. That wouldn't have happened before Trump.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. Scary.
Is there anything that lawyers, defense lawyers at least, we're the only ones who dare to do something? Is there anything that we can do here? I mean, the thing is, again, I'm not too sure at this point what the effect of that report is, other than giving them the psychological closure or vindication that they've been hoping for. But I mean, if they still really want something, if they keep pushing and keep demanding an apology or something, is there anything that the defense bar can do?
I mean, we need to be loud, frankly, and we need to be public, and it needs to be more than just like me on the CBC at 7 in the morning or ranting and raving on Twitter. Like, it has to be like a collective effort, I think. We need to
Yeah,
make a loud stance publicly somehow. Ideally, with the support of the Crown Attorneys Association, although given the crickets in the last few days, I'm not sure we're getting that. But we need to be loud.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Not just let it pass by.
any final thoughts, any final rants that you want to let out of this system, Allison, on this
There will
subject?
never be a final rant. There will
Yeah.
always be another rant to come, I'm sure. But no, it's just I like this one just makes me it's so absurd. It makes me giggle because I can't actually believe what I'm seeing and hearing.
I agree.
And yet it's just so incredibly infuriating.
I mean, I remember when I first read the article in the Toronto Star, I think was the first time that I read about this report. I was really shocked. I didn't understand what was going on because I had no
No,
idea like that they had their own investigation into
no.
whether they had colluded or not. So I was first shocked, and then I just couldn't believe the audacity of actually doing this and the results and the comments that were made. I don't know. I've never witnessed anything like this before. I
No.
think one of the reasons why we don't really know how to react, what to do is because it's
We've never
unprecedented.
seen it.
Never
Yeah.
seen it before. So it's just too much for the Toronto police. Honestly, I think they need some restructuring, internal restructuring, because there's some deep problems at
From
the
what I hear,
PCS.
a lot of pretty high-ranking officers would agree with you. Yet here we are. Yeah, sad.
Well, hopefully, I would like to have you back on Lawbreak, but on a happier note and subject, and not another like disaster police news because it's been pretty intense this year only, and we're only in March. So
Oh,
who knows what 2026 is holding more from the police. But it's always nice to see you. At least it gives us the opportunity to reconnect and to have you back here, Alison. And I guess to be continued. We'll see what will happen.
to be continued. See
Yes.
you next time.
Bye.